This is CBC Here and Now.
Stop trying to play this game with semantics. You cannot, for years and years and years, promote yourself to be Mi'kmaq, allow people to think that you're Mi'kmaq, and now say, oh, no, I kind of only meant heritage.
Calling for action. On the heels of a CBC News investigation, one lawyer and academic wants to see President Vian Timmins suspended.
Fighting to save an ambulance service that's been working these roads in the Whitburn area for almost 3 decades.
You've put our hearts and soul into this business and responding to the people, and I'm very discouraged.
Coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. An Indigenous lawyer, author, and academic is calling on Memorial University to suspend and investigate its president. It comes in the wake of a CBC investigation into Vian Timmins, her statements on her Indigenous heritage, and past membership in an unrecognized First Nation group. Here Now's Ariana Kelland reports.
Outside Memorial University today was a regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Regents, the university's governing body. On the agenda, MUN's president Vian Timmins. Mi'kmaq lawyer and academic Pam Pomater says their decision should be clear.
Once they knew that this was going to come out, far before the media said anything, they should have taken immediate action, made a statement to the Mi'kmaq community to say, listen, we, in a time of truth and reconciliation, we care about our relationships with the Mi'kmaq Nation. We care about undoing the harms of the past. We take identity appropriation very seriously. And because we have been made aware of those claims, we are going to suspend this president pending an investigation.
CBC News reported yesterday that for years, Timmins' past membership in the Brador Mi'kmaq First Nation appeared on her CV and in professional biographies online, even after she says she stopped being a member. The Brador band is not recognized by the Union of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq or the federal government. And CBC research reviewed by genealogists showed her Mi'kmaq ancestry appears to date back to the 1600s. But Timmins says she has always made a clear distinction between her lineage and her identity.
I have never claimed Mi'kmaq identity, and I'm not going to. And I'm going to continue to be very clear that it is part of my ancestry.
I think most people in public understand when you assert a Mi'kmaq ancestry or heritage, you're asserting yourself as Mi'kmaq.
Timmins says she is honoring her father's wishes by acknowledging her ancestors.
Well, how can she honor an ancestor she doesn't know and never knew and has zero connection to? She doesn't have a connection to the Mi'kmaq Nation. She's not a part of it. How on earth is she going to honor that?
MUN's Office of Indigenous Affairs has issued a statement asking that the university community give them space to gather and discuss. In a brief statement, Board of Regents Chair Glenn Barnes said this is a significant and sensitive topic that requires due consideration. Barnes says the conversation must be guided by Indigenous voices. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
A 16-year-old boy was seriously injured in an assault at Prince of Wales Collegiate High School in St. John's today. Police say the teenager was taken to the Janeway. No further word on his condition or what occurred. The RNC is looking for information and video footage from the area from anyone in the Centre City neighborhoods of Elizabeth Avenue, Anderson Avenue, Stab Court, and surrounding area. We'll continue to follow this story. In Corner Brook, an attempted murder charge has been laid after a man was attacked by someone with an axe. The RNC says it learned about the violent attack last Friday evening when a seriously injured 57-year-old man was found in the lobby of their detachment. He was taken to hospital but has since been released. A 32-year-old St. John's man, Evan Long, has been charged with attempted murder and other weapons-related charges.
We believe that more than one edged weapon was used in the incident, and I can confirm that one of the edged weapons is believed to be an axe. This was a targeted attack, and that they were known to each other. And of course, our concern at the forefront is public safety, and we had determined very quickly in this investigation that there was no concern for public safety, no threat to the general community as a whole.
for a few peaks of sun out there today in some areas. But if you take a live look at what's happening out there right now, we do have some snow in Gander, some wet pavement in Lewisport, and then it looks fairly dry at the moment in both Pinsbrook and Corner Brook. And if we take a live look, well, trying to take a live look outside, I guess there's nothing but black. Current conditions in St. John's, -2. With that wind chill, it's more like -11. We do have some fairly gusty winds, northerlies between 50 and 70 kilometers. There it is. It just showed up. So taking a look outside, we do have a little bit of fog on the go as well. Our area of low pressure well offshore, you can see how big it is. It's beautiful as far as structure is concerned. But this is our weather maker as we head through at least tomorrow and into Saturday, where we're actually going to see some significant snow with that. You can see some of that snow on the radar there for the west coast, but Environment Canada has already issued some warnings. Snowfall warnings, special weather statements. We'll get all into it coming up.
Well, the daughter of a man who died during the Bonavista ER closure took her fight to Confederation Building today. Charles Marsh died in an ambulance on his way to Clarenville last month. The Bonavista ER was closed for 18 days in February. Anyone experiencing a medical emergency in the area had to travel more than 100 kilometers to Clarenville. Now, his daughter, Shelley Goslin, says she doesn't want her father's death to be in vain.
I've been home for his funeral and advocating on behalf of the Bonavista and surrounding area residents that no, not ever should the ER doors be locked. And since I've been home, the ER doors have been locked most of the time. We just want people to see that my dad has become the face of this movement in the past couple of weeks since his passing, and we're not giving up until the doors are open 24/7, 365 days a year.
Well, Smith's Ambulance is speaking out about the recent termination of its Whitburn contract. The owner says his company has been treated unfairly by Eastern Health. He and his employees want their jobs back. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
We were stunned.
Wade Smith says he was blindsided in early March when his company's contract with Eastern Health was terminated.
We were sat down eating supper and then knock on the door 20 minutes to 6 and letter. And when I read it, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Documents that Smith shared with CBC show Eastern Health terminated its contract with Smith's because it believed the company breached its contract. The health authority says Smith's failed to respond to a call in June.
We did respond to that call. I got the people here that responded to the call. I got the documentation here that we responded to the call.
Eastern Health also says Smith's didn't respond to a call on February 4th. Smith disputes that too, saying his company has the right to refuse unsafe work during a blistering storm and a power failure at their ambulance base.
Indications from Eastern Health is that they didn't have a right to refuse to respond on safe work, which is not true under the Occupational Health and Safety Act.
Smith says his company and its 15 employees have been treated unfairly.
I think we need to be reinstated until this is fully reviewed. And I think that the Premier needs to get involved. And I think we should have the opportunity to sit down and talk to the man who makes the decisions in this province.
Smith's employees say they're devastated, and some plan to leave the province.
I already have plans. So if this is not fixed very soon, then I'm probably going to go to Nova Scotia to work.
If the dispute can't be solved, Smith says a lawsuit will be his final option to sue for damages and wrongful termination.
As of next week, we'll be moving forward with a statement of claim.
And for Whitburn area residents who fear they won't have the services they need in the future, government officials are reassuring them they will have the services they had before this contract was terminated. Mark Quinn, CBC News, Whitburn.
Well, consumers are paying more for all types of fuel tonight. The big one is the cost of gas, up nearly 8 cents. On the Avalon, a liter of fuel is now up to $1.73. Diesel costs an extra 5.7 cents. Stove oil is up by close to 5 cents. Furnace oil and propane are also up slightly, but by less than a cent a liter. Well, Sybil Rose got quite the surprise when she looked out her front door on Tuesday. A large polar bear was walking across her yard in St. Carol's on the Northern Peninsula. Now, that sighting and others have prompted wildlife officials to issue a polar bear warning for that area and southern Labrador.
I was still in my pajamas, and I put my naked foot out on the bridge. The bridge was wet, but I said I want to get a good picture, so I put my foot out on the bridge and took the picture of him. And he just looked right at me. He would have walked right up the road. Only thing, when I spoke, I said, "Hey," and he turned around. Yeah, and he ran too. He never just took his time. He ran. He was frightened. It was really big. The paws, you could see the hair going right down over. You couldn't see his toenails or anything. You just the fur or hair, whatever they call it, was going right down over his paws. He was really big.
Well, from polar bear warnings to snowfall warnings, we have that and some gusty winds on tap as well. I'll get into all the details coming up.
We say sometimes like we're entering into folk categories, it feels a little uncomfortable.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But we're often reminded that, you know, our beginnings, our roots do come from that same tradition of folk, I would say.
Well, tonight, a special documentary. Here and Now takes a deep dive into the role folk music plays in modern Newfoundland and Labrador. That's ahead in 20 minutes.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. VIP prize deadline is midnight tomorrow. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Time for a look at the weather, and I found it kind of an unpleasant day today with all of the wind. We had some sunshine, but it was just kind of hard getting around with all that wind.
Yeah, the sun, like you said, was quite nice, but I think we topped out, the graphic I showed you before is about 81 kilometers per hour in St. John, so it has been gusty. Let's take a look at the daytime highs today. Hovering around the 0-degree mark, but obviously feeling a lot colder than that because of those winds. Temperatures the warmest along the south coast between 2 and 4 degrees. And then around 0, above 0, Happy Valley Goose Bay, 2 degrees this afternoon. And if we take a look at where we're sitting right now, that temperature's dropped a little bit down to -1 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, -5 in Makkovik, and temperatures across the island. There's that wind chill. -11 is what it's feeling like right now in St. John's with that temperature at -2. So taking a look at what's going on right now, you can see that area of low pressure offshore at the moment, but that's going to move in as we head through to Friday and into Saturday. But at the moment we do have some flurries happening through central, which aren't showing up on the radar, and then some through the interior as well. Spotty, but still showing up. We shouldn't see too much in the way of accumulation from that. The majority of the accumulation will come tomorrow. So here's a look at what's going to happen through the night tonight with those flurries. We've got some flurries on the go up across Labrador, at least the coast anyway. And then again, along the northeast coast, these winds are going to stick around as well, gusting out of the northeast between about 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. So temperature is going to dip tonight, minus single digits for the most part. Up across Labrador, same thing, but about -10 in Lab City as we head through the overnight tonight. And again, your winds will be gusty out of the north, especially towards the coast, between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour. Now, Environment Canada has a snowfall warning in place at the moment. This is for Friday, Saturday timeframe, but from Green Bay, White Bay through to Bonavista North and Gander, and then from Terra Nova all along the northeast coast to the northern Avalon, currently under a special weather statement, and that is out ahead of this snow that's going to move in. So as we head through the day on Friday, just seeing some of that light snow out ahead of it, likely in the way of flurries. We could see some along the coast of Labrador as well. But the main event will move in as we head into late afternoon, early evening. So around 7 or 8 o'clock tomorrow night, we should start to see some of that snow develop. And we will see the steadier snow by the time we get into the midnight hour for the Avalon. And then that's pretty much going to stick around right as we head into Saturday morning. And eventually it'll end, but it won't. It'll take its time to end, though, for the Avalon and portions of eastern Newfoundland as we get into mid-afternoon, early evening. But then we should be said and done with that snow by the time we get into Saturday evening. So as far as snowfall amounts go, good bet we could see somewhere between 20 to 30 centimeters for central. Now along the TCH, your traveling will not be very nice Friday night into Saturday afternoon, and that's where we should see the majority of the snow. But from Green Bay, White Bay, the eastern portion of it anyway, and then through to Bonavista, including the northern Avalon, thinking somewhere between 10 to 20 centimeters. I think we can split the difference in the middle for sure, and a couple of centimeters above or below. But what does fall will be very wet, and it's going to be what we call cement snow at this point, as we see those temperatures fairly mild as well. And then from the northern peninsula, Corner Brook, through to the southern Avalon, trace to as much as 5 to 10 centimeters, it looks like now towards the coast. That's where we're talking about that trace to maybe 2 centimeters of snow falling because the temperatures will be mild, so we should see some influence from that as well. Now we're also talking about the potential for some gusty winds. These will be northerlies between 60 to as much as 80 kilometers per hour. Coastal areas, you'll see the highest amount on that 80 kilometer per hour. But even though we're seeing these heavy snowfall amounts, the blowing snow potential should be limited because of how wet the snow will be. So as far as Friday afternoon temperatures go, there you go. So 0 to 1 or 2 degrees will be the daytime highs. And for the northern peninsula, you're looking at those similar temperatures. Now up across Labrador, Your temperatures will be sitting about -5 for Lab City. You're still looking at the potential for snow, especially along the coast. You could pick up 10 to 15 centimeters of snow as well. By the time we get into Saturday, we should start to see that snow ending. Temperatures won't really move too much, especially up across Labrador as well. Pretty much a carbon copy forecast. And then as we head into Sunday, we're looking at those similar temperatures, 1 to 3 degrees. Best chance of seeing the sun looks like it will be in Port aux Basques, the Northern Peninsula, and then parts of Labrador as well. So that's a look at your forecast. But I want to leave you tonight, or at least for now, with our weather photo of the day. Take a look at this. Even though we saw some pretty high winds today, the surf was just as high at Cape Spear, and Lorraine Windsor shared this lovely shot with us. And if you would like to share any of these great photos with us, you can send them to my Facebook page, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Returning now to our top story, an Indigenous lawyer, academic, and author is calling for action in the wake of the Mun president's claims of Indigenous heritage. For years, Vian Timmins' resume listed her as a member of an unrecognized Mi'kmaq band. She also accepted an Inspire Award given to Indigenous people by the Indigenous community. Pam Palmater says Memorial needs to take a stronger stance, and she spoke with CBC's Ariana Kelland earlier today.
My first thought was really one of frustration. Why is it that we have to drag universities kicking and screaming through the media in order for them to really address our long-standing concerns about pretendians in universities? And as I understand it, this wasn't news to most people in Newfoundland.
I want to ask you, what, if anything, does it change if Vian Timmins says she has found her father's documents, she has a more detailed history now than what she has presented and what we have found? Say she says, you know, my ancestor isn't in the 1600s, it's in the 1800s. Does that make a difference?
No, it doesn't. It's a really racist conception of what it means to be a Mi'kmaq person, because we're a nation. We have citizens, we have political, legal, social, cultural rights and issues within our nation. We are not a race of people that you can measure by blood. And so, not being Mi'kmaq, she is trying to do just that, find one drop of blood somewhere in her ancestry to try to make claim to being a Mi'kmaq person. And there is no line she was walking. She was getting awards for being an Indigenous person. She has been claiming Mi'kmaq, Mi'kmaq, Mi'kmaq on all of her CVs and bios. I mean, it's really just a game of semantics. If she seems to think that she's insulated by saying Mi'kmaq ancestry or Mi'kmaq heritage instead of saying Mi'kmaq, I think most people in public understand when you assert a Mi'kmaq ancestry or heritage, you're asserting yourself as Mi'kmaq. I haven't heard her say in the public in any of her speeches or her awards saying, hi, I'm a Mi'kmaq with very remote ancestry, but I'm not Mi'kmaq and I'm not Indigenous. I'm proud of that one ancestor. That she doesn't say that. She doesn't explain it. She allows people to believe she's Mi'kmaq.
If her motivations are to honor this ancestor, what do you think she could have done? What should she have said? Should she have said anything if those were her true motivations?
Well, how can she honor an ancestor she doesn't know and never knew and has zero connection to? She doesn't have a connection to the Mi'kmaq nation. She's not a part of it. How on earth is she going to honor that? And then what about the thousands of other ancestors that she has? Is only one ancestor out of thousands the one that you pick to honor? Or has she gone through all of the graveyards with her father to find and honor all of the other ancestors? No, this is a very targeted and specific search for one ancestor, and it appears very much to lay claim to that identity and try to create this false line that, oh, I'm Mi'kmaq, but I'm not Mi'kmaq.
What do you think the university should do at this point?
Well, the university is not doing great so far. Once they knew that this was going to come out, far before the media said anything, they should have taken immediate action, made a statement to the Mi'kmaq community to say, listen, we, in a time of truth and reconciliation, we care about our relationships with the Mi'kmaq Nation. We care about undoing the harms of the past. We take identity appropriation very seriously. And because we have been made aware of those claims, we are going to suspend this president pending an investigation. I mean, I don't know what their governance models are, but in all of the other pretendian cases, you see people suspended and or removed from their jobs until there's an investigation. I don't see anything about an investigation. I don't see anything about any kind of concern for the Mi'kmaq community or the harm it does to Native students, staff, faculty, the irreparable harms it does to the Mi'kmaq Nation. It's embarrassing to constantly have to say, no, they're not Mi'kmaq, they're not Mi'kmaq, they're not Mi'kmaq, while they're promoting this kind of Wikipedia version stereotype of what it means to be Indigenous.
Broomball, it's a blend of ball hockey and ice hockey. It's been played in this province for decades, but now only a small number of diehards are still chasing that coconut-sized ball.
Game's in trouble, yes.
And how does that make you feel?
A little sad, because us girls like the road trip.
I would agree with that, and it hurts me right here to the core.
My feeling is that within 10 years, it'll disappear off the map.
I'm Terry Roberts in Stephenville, and we're shining a sweeping spotlight onto this competitive, sometimes hard-hitting sport. That's Monday on Here and Now.
We're on board Coast Guard ship Amundsen with a boatload of researchers exploring the deep ocean. Watch Science of the Labrador Sea Sunday at 11:30 and Monday at 7.
For the remainder of Here and Now, we'll be bringing you a special documentary from video producer Mark Cumby. NL Folk Now is part of our For the Love of Music series and explores the role folk music plays in modern Newfoundland and Labrador. Have a look.
There's all kinds of different elements to like folk arts and folk music.
It's music of the people, right? So, which inevitably leads to a lot of gray, a lot of confusion.
Some people understand folk music to be like singer-songwriters. Some people think of it as the kind of music that we play.
I feel like it's a natural progression for our folk music in this province to start looking different over time.
It's sort of like a feeling as well.
It's almost easier to ask what is not folk music.
There was a time when people were kind of mildly embarrassed about being Newfoundlanders, and they were sort of embarrassed about accordion music, and nobody knew who Emile Benoit was, and nobody knew who Rufus Ginchard was, you know? These were just dudes playing at dances in small towns.
The folk music scene that was really like ignited by that revival in the 70s has pretty consistently just kept rolling on. Every now and then there's a new band that reinvigorates it, like in the late 80s or early 90s, you know, the Irish Descendants were huge, and they created all this new interest in Newfoundland music, especially the Irish-influenced music from the Southern Shore.
Oh, Albert Mooney says he loves her, all the boys are fighting for her.
And then after them, there came this other wave of like the Ennis Sisters and groups like that in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and now we're moving into, we have like the Dardanelles and the Once, who are introducing original material, but also staying true to, you know, the folk tradition.
It takes a lot to leave. It takes much more to stay.
The first time that the three of us really started making music together would have been in the summer of 2006. We were doing the summer theater festival out in Trinity, working with Rising Tide Theatre. So we were all out there together.
One year, you and I have worked together.
2004.
And you two had worked together
2005.
as well. And then in 2006, we were all together. And then there was a show that they needed to do. And they needed
September 9th, 4 o'clock.
Probably. It sounded good enough that we just kept going.
And Phil and Jerry have, also had the added benefit of being a couple. Like they'd already been together for several years at that point. So you guys already had a bit of that.
Well, we had played, but even before
before
we were hanging out that way, we were singing music.
Hanging out that way.
Settle down.
Clean,
keep it clean.
No, this is a family festival, Geraldine. Come on, man.
Tried to be seen to be all that you've been from the moment you came to this place. When your heart in your hand, there's a measurement that the meek could not help but embrace.
It seems to me to need so much less infrastructure. Like folk music can live, in the back of a van in a field. Right?
Yeah.
You just pop the end up and then there's your show. Yeah. It doesn't require full backline and lighting and,
But it can do that
drone shots. But it can do that too. It can do all of those things, but it can also just exist around this table and people would come and say like, oh, we saw a great show. Oh, where was it? I was at the picnic table in front of the snack shack. It was killer.
Yeah.
That can move your love to hate. All the beautiful things that the loneliness brings when the living get turned to the late.
I always think folk music is just, without oversimplifying, it's music of the people, right? So, which inevitably leads to a lot of gray, a lot of confusion, because the people are so diverse, right? Like we're all so diverse, but because of that, you end up having this beautifully huge umbrella of of backgrounds, of styles, of influences. So I think folk music is actually quite a deep well.
It's hard. It's kind of compartmentalized, but only into 3 compartments, I guess. Like there's the bar bands, which is a great time, and then there's traditional sessions, which is all tunes or mostly tunes. And then, I don't really know what the third compartment is. Singer-songwriter types, yeah. So, naturally we sort of don't fit into either of those things, to be honest with you.
Who stole her back for mini spoons? It was here before. A piece of board cut out like Newfoundland and Labrador. 47 mini teaspoons, 47 towns. On the wall since 82 and never taken down. It was
Dave Penny is a folk musician, and even though a lot of the recitations that he does and a lot of the songs that he sings, he's written himself, but they're definitely Newfoundland music.
There is no worm farm or a sod farm, nothing even handy. It was made up, sure I don't think there even is an Andy. Don't believe a word you hear in Goobies.
All of his subject matter of his songs are like local references. There's totally local cultural experiences, It's a great example of original contemporary folk music.
I'm the one out licking shopping carts, I hate to say. It's what a fellow said to me from 3 meters away. They didn't mention me by name, he said, but I think maybe someone caught me in the act and spoke to Dr. Haggy.
My sort of thing to perform, wasn't serious ballads, it was comic songs, right? In the Kenneth Peacock collection, there were only so many sections called comic ditties, and I ended up running out. Meanwhile, there was this sort of, I'd love to write songs. Like, it's just, everybody wants to be something, and that's what I wanted to be, I guess. are jigs, reels, you know, the diddly stuff. Tunes generally are like a traditional session is wall to wall jigs and reels and hornpipes and singles and, you know, the scatter song, but for the most part, jigs and reels, really. You know, so a tune is Muscles in the Corner. A song is Saltwater Joys. You know what I mean?
The term running the goat, which is like a set number of 7 or 8 tunes, you do all these dance moves, like Kubasonics do the running the goat. Traditional dance music of Newfoundland, originally from Ireland, that's been fermenting in Newfoundland for 500 years, and then this Ukrainian band draws on that tradition as well and like seamlessly integrates it with their tradition, and it's amazing.
I grew up in I'm from Winnipeg originally, so I grew up there, but my dad's originally from Saskatchewan. So our family's from Western Ukraine, and at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, the Canadian government was trying to settle the prairies of Canada, and they were looking for farmers from Europe, mostly wheat farmers and stuff like that, and that's the part of Ukraine where my family's from looks almost identical to Manitoba or Saskatchewan or Alberta. I think I was a young teen when I settled in. I started taking lessons on keyboard instruments and then stuck with that for a while, but little by little all of this weird stuff crept in, including like the cymbala, that hammered dulcimer kind of instrument that I play a lot. My dad played the fiddle, and my grandfather played the fiddle, and my great-grandfather played the fiddle. And in Ukrainian, in the folk music, if you want to call it that, the traditional music from the part of Ukraine that they're from, usually it was fiddle and the cymbala. Like those two instruments were kind of the mainstay of for dance music and stuff like that. So I kind of gravitated a little bit toward that. People used to invite me to come play by myself on various weird instruments, and there was a dance festival happening in Edmonton, and one of the organizers asked me to come and play there. And at the time, my brother played the drums, and he happened to be in Edmonton. He had a summer job in Edmonton and was living with me, and I always had this idea of like taking the old time music but twisting it around and adding like all kinds of other elements to it. When we had the kind of Alberta version of Kubasonics, they were, well, I would talk about weird stuff like going to a wedding, but sing the words in English so that people like my cousins who felt like they were Ukrainian but didn't speak the language, they could say, oh yeah, we remember that, or that's something we can relate to. We've gravitated away from, you know, like anybody can play a country tune and make it sound exactly like a country tune, but not everybody can play a Ukrainian tune that has a country feel to it. They kind of evolved over the years, you know, people kind of came and went, and then as my own kids were growing up, I used to let them come along to shows, and same like my old uncles used to let me sit in, so we let them sit in, and they learned how to do all of this stuff, and now they do it better than I do, so.
Technically, this band has been on the go since I was a toddler. I kind of grew up with it, but it's really cool to be, you know, kind of like a full-time member now and have more of a voice in this chapter of it in the past 7 years.
In Ukrainian, it's really popular saying is Slava Ukraini, which means glory to Ukraine, and Heroyam Slava means glory to the heroes. This piece is called Heroyam Slava.
Heroyam Slava!
historically, folk music has been this catalyst for change and for activism. As we are kind of, I guess, the most prominent Ukrainian group at the beginning of this war, at least we were, and now there's, you know, many more Ukrainians moving to Newfoundland and Labrador, but a lot of people did kind of turn to us because they didn't maybe know any other Ukrainian people personally, and so we felt like, you know, an obligation, but also an opportunity to use our voice to raise awareness about what's happening and let people know how they can help out in any way that they are able. And you know, I think if you have a platform where you get to address like crowds of people, I think it is important, you know, when there's injustice in the world to stand up and say something about that.
One of my earliest experiences of participating in folk music was back in the late 80s, the show On the Road Again with Wayne Ronstadt. They did an episode on my grandfather and O'Brien's music, and my grandfather tried to teach him how to play the accordion and stuff.
You're doing fine. I have a customer here.
We did a shoot up at the family cabin where my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and all my cousins, we all kind of got together for a big sing-along, and they filmed us singing Sonny's Dream. That's kind of my earliest experience of actually like participating in folk music, was that shoot for the TV show, which was a pretty cool experience and a great memory as well. Yeah. As far back as I can remember, whenever we would go to visit my grandmother, and before he passed away, my grandfather, we would come to the music store and go upstairs and see Nan and Pop. So the music store was like always part of my world. Like it seemed perfectly normal for my grandparents to live above a music store.
O'Brien's.
When my uncle had to give up the store, I was like, well, I do it. Like, I worked here for years and years, and it seemed like a natural fit, and I felt like I knew the vibe of the place and what it had always been, and I thought I could sort of kind of still maintain the folk cred of the place, but also modernize it a bit and maybe expand the kind of music that we were trying to represent a little bit as well.
I should be falling asleep, instead I'm falling apart. I'm holding hands with your memory alone in the dark.
Why does Silver Wolf Band always have this tag of folk rock? I think it's because we sing a lot about where we're from. We sing about the people and the places that, of Labrador. And I think that's what makes us folk rock. We're heavy on the rock when it comes to the music portion of it. But in terms of if you listen to the words, it's very folk inspired. We talk about where we're from. We talk about things that maybe certain people who are outside of the province might not recognize that as a folk element or something that's specific to Labrador.
My biggest folk influence for sure growing up would have been my great uncle Gerald Mitchell, the Labrador balladeer as they called him.
Overlooking the waters of Lake Melville so grand.
A lot of the musical influence of Labrador in particular was really interesting because there was a lot of American military influence, and I think country music came up there really early. And so when you listen to like Gerald Mitchell, as Bon referred to there, he has a lot of his stuff very country sounding.
From high on the mountain of old Mokamee.
When I first got into music, much like you, I started looking towards like who are the Bob Dylans and the Neil Youngs of Labrador, like Harry Martin.
Take care of my world, and I'll take care of you.
And I listened to Harry Martin. I was like, I just absolutely love how it sounds kind of like something you could hear like Gordon Lightfoot or somebody like that singing, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. But he's singing about Labrador.
There's a land of boundless beauty where the untamed rivers run and majestic snow-capped mountains rise to meet the morning sun.
And then there's like this folk legend about him kind of grew, that, he's this conservation officer who lives in Cartwright, Paradise River. And everybody was like, he could have toured everywhere. He could have went anywhere, he could have been our Ron Hines, you know what I mean? But he just loved staying there. But he wrote these really beautiful ballads basically about Labrador, the land that he loves, and little stories and things. But his songs are so beautiful, and the depth of them really inspired me to start writing music. And I think that's why I kind of gravitated more towards the folk style of music. And I do agree, and I think you would too, that, you know, we're more, when we say sometimes like we're entering into folk categories, it feels a little uncomfortable.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But we're often reminded that, you know, our beginnings, our roots do come from that same tradition of folk, I would say.
Thank you.
There was a time when the violin wasn't too popular. You know, everybody wanted to be Jimi Hendrix or whatever, or, you know, play the electric guitar. And now you got kids playing the fiddle, playing the accordion. You know, again, we were at the launch for this year's folk festival, you know, where they were announcing the lineup. You know, there's a group of young guys. They're still in junior high school, and they'll be playing on the big stage of the folk festival, you know, and they take accordion lessons from either Mark Hiscock or Aaron Collis or whatever, one of those fellows, who's also, you know, teaching young kids all the traditional accordion tunes. Newfoundland itself is a place where a kid doesn't have to feel like a dork because he wants to play the accordion or the fiddle. Like, you know, you don't have to try and be cool. Like, playing the accordion, it can be cool. You know what I mean?
I guess it's music for the people.
I think the interesting thing about folk music is that it is like a living and breathing sort of tradition.
Like, folk music is there to remind us that ultimately we have a lot more in common with each other than we don't.
Folk music kind of varies over space, whereas pop music varies over time.
I didn't see Tina Turner when she was here, but I did see all the Buddy What's His Name and the other fellows' concerts. It's just the way it went.
The lines are very blurry for defining folk music, and there's also this geographic element. So, like, folk music in Newfoundland is, where we're on an island, we can kind of hone in and kind of like focus on what is folk music in Newfoundland. But of course there's folk music from all other parts of North America and Europe and Asia. And then you will get influences from other folk traditions that get mixed into areas. So it's a hard thing to define, absolutely. So I don't know how to describe it either.